from an evolutionary standpoint, why are we so easily fooled? Does it make any sense? You would think that over time, evolution would have favored people who were good at detecting lies because they would have an advantage. And Levine says, actually, no, that's wrong. The people who have an advantage from an evolutionary standpoint are those who trust implicitly, because trusting implicitly allows you to have far more efficient communication. It allows you to build organizations. It allows you to develop social rituals and functions and all kinds of things. If I start from the premise that you, Fareed, are who you say you are, we can very quickly set in motion a whole chain of productive events. If my first thought is, I don't know, is your name even Fareed? Did you really go to Yale? Is this CNN? I don't know.
But presumably that trusting instinct has the danger that you get fooled, and is the argument that it's a price worth paying because every now and then you'll get fooled, but in the grand scheme of things, by trusting people, you'll get more done.
Exactly. That is the argument. That is Levine's argument. That is my argument. And I don't think we're aware of this trade-off. And I think every now and again, we get in trouble when we're fooled, and we think that being fooled is somehow a sign that we are negligent or incompetent. And we overreact, and we build institutions that don't trust anymore. We give up on the very thing that made us human. So I have a chapter in my book, for example, on the Penn State case. Jerry Sandusky was a football coach at Penn State who was found to be a serial child molester. And he was convicted and jailed. But then prosecutors started going after people at the university and convicted the athletic director, the vice president of finance, and went after the president of the university, a guy named Graham Spanier, saying that they were implicated in this because they should have known that they should have acted on these minor suspicions. They should have known he was a child molester. I feel incredibly strongly that that's absolutely the wrong. That was a travesty of justice to go after the administration. You can't ask people. We should be celebrating people in positions of authority for the fact they build trusting communities. And we should accept the fact that once in a generation, some university president or some other institution head is going to be misled. But do you really want the opposite? Do you really want to have running your universities or your schools or your, companies, people who are so paranoid that they would suspect the worst of their employees? No.
Neville Chamberlain, at core, signed the treaty he did, the Munich Accord with Hitler, because he trusted him. He trusted that Hitler would keep his word and that he was not going to take over any more of Czechoslovakia. He was not going to invade Poland. He was not going to do anything else. Was Chamberlain right to be trusting?
He was wrong to base his judgment of Adolf Hitler on a face-to-face encounter. The paradox of Chamberlain and Hitler is the people who got Hitler right were the ones who never met him, and the people who got him wrong were the ones who did spend time with him. I'm very interested in how we can be led astray by face-to-face encounters. So that's a perfect story for my purposes, that Chamberlain should have stayed home and read Mein Kampf, right? There was plenty of evidence about Hitler's intentions. And the problem with going to visit him, as Chamberlain did, is not that you can't gather information from a face-to-face encounter, but when you meet as mesmerizing and charismatic a man as Hitler face-to-face, you run the risk of overvaluing whatever information you get from that encounter and discounting the really useful hard evidence about the man's stated intentions and previous behavior, right? So people like Churchill back home in England, by the way, I didn't realize until I wrote the book, Churchill never met Hitler, ever. Stalin never met Hitler. FDR never met Hitler. The only Western leader to meet Hitler, well, the French leader did, was William Lyon Mackenzie King, the Canadian Prime Minister, who met him and loved him, thought he was like this kind of great historic, basically not a good idea to meet Hitler.
But let me ask a question about particularly Chamberlain, because you do talk about this a little bit, which is, was it also that he wanted to trust him? what people forget about Chamberlain was this was a point at which, World War I had just happened 10, 15 years ago. Europe was devastated. Britain had been totally devastated. It was very weak. It didn't have the capacity to rearm in a short... So in a sense, this was sort of, you were hoping that you could sign a peace deal so that you didn't have to go through the incredibly wrenching process of telling your country, having sent them out to a world war where they got slaughtered, we're going to have to do it again. We're going to have to, and not to make the analogy too strongly, but, when you see President Trump wanting to believe that Kim Jong-un is going to give him a deal, there's some trust seems to be born from the idea that, you want this to be true.
I think that's an interesting point, and I think that's completely consistent with Levine's theory, which is, why do we trust? We trust because legitimately that trust allows things to move a lot more smoothly than they would otherwise, and efficiently than they would otherwise. So absolutely, it's a part of the psychology and of George Bush saying, said, I looked Putin in the eye and said, this is a man, I saw into his soul and said, this is a man who can be trusted. All of them are both, they are demonstrating this downside to our central trusting nature. They are showing how bad we are at decoding face-to-face encounters. And they are also, they are expressing a correct notion that if I trust you and it works out, things are going to be so much easier. Like you're right. Chamberlain desperately wants this thing just to go away.
Do you get duped?
Of course, but I'm very trusting. I come from a very trusting family. I'm a high trust guy. I'm not a paranoid, suspicious person.
Malcolm Gladwell, pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Fareed.